Okay, tonight we're scheduled to go through Mark 5 and Mark 6. And John Mark was the one writing it, and he's actually, we think, got most of this information from Peter because he hung out with Peter a lot, and he kind of he's writing to the Roman people, and he's want to portray Jesus as a servant leader, and he's doing a good job. Each one kind of has a different theme of the Gospels. So after the very long day in which Jesus was rejected by the Pharisees, and in which he began to teach in parables about the nature of the mystery kingdom that would come as a result of the unpardonable sin. In the evening, he set out in boats with the disciples to cross the Sea of Galilee from the northwest side to the northeast side. And in that day, the northeast side was Gentile territory. So he's going to go over there to the Gentile territory. And the unpardonable sin was rejecting Jesus as the Messiah, as the Jewish leaders did. And the people didn't object to the Jewish leaders. And as a result, in 70 AD, a lot of them died, and the rest of them were scattered around the world, and this was the last punishment in Deuteronomy that they never had faced before. Okay, starting in chapter 5, verse 1, they came to the other side of the sea, into the country of Gerasenes. When he got out of the boat, and immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him, and he had his dwelling among the tombs. No one was able to bind him any more, even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. So this is a very crazy guy that they had over there. This is one of the few times he crossed over into the Gentile territory to get away from the Jewish crowds to be able to teach his disciples privately. Matthew says he came into the country of Gerasenes, while Mark and Matthew say the country of Gerasenes. It was the same city. For the first time, we have a detailed description of an extremely demonic state, and what he described here in a very extreme form of demonism. Not all demonized people are as extreme as this. Verse 5, constantly, night and day, he was screaming among the tombs and in the mountains, and gashed himself with stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and shouted with a loud voice. He said, "What business do we have with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, do not torment me." For he had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." So he was talking to the demon that was possessing the man right there. Here we see what the demons commonly know. First of all, they have no problem recognizing who Jesus is. They recognize that he is the Messiah, the Son of the Most High God. Also notice that they know their future doom. In Matthew's account, in verse 29, they say, "Have you come here to torment us before the time?" They know they are destined to go into the lake of fire at the appointed time. Originally, the lake of fire was not intended for fallen humanity, but for fallen angels. But now it will also be for fallen humanity. And it will be the only place where God is not present. So they recognize Jesus, who Jesus is, and they recognize their future. So they were well aware. Here Jesus uses the traditional Jewish method for casting out demons. He asks them, "What is your name?" In the traditional method, they would trick the demon into giving them their name, and then they would say, in the name of Yeshua, come out. But Jesus, this time, he got the name Legion, and he just commanded them get out with his own power. And he says, my name is Legion, for we are many. Notice the change of pronouns from my to we. A legion of demons was anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000. A small legion was 3,000. A full legion was 6,000. So in this demonic state, there were at least 3,000 demons. And he began to implore him earnestly not to send them out of the country. This is, the demon is imploring Jesus. Now there was a large herd of swine feeding nearby on the mountain, and the demons implored him, saying, send us into the swine, so that we may enter them. Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the unclean spirit entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. The reason he allowed them to go in the pigs was not likely to be compassion for them, but for the reaction of the herdsmen that followed. Here we see three results of this event. The herdsmen run and tell everything in both the city and the country. The man who the demons had gone out was sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind. All the people of the country of Gennesaret and all the surrounding district asked him to leave, for they were gripped with fear. Their herdsmen ran away and reported in the city and in the country, and the people came to see what it was that happened. They came to Jesus and observed the man who had been demon-possessed, sitting down, clothed in his right mind, and the very man who had the legion, and they became frightened. Those who had seen it described to them how it had happened to the demon-possessed man and all about the swine. So he was sitting at Jesus' side, and Jesus was teaching him. Yeah, that's what it says. We see the man sitting down at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind. This is a picture of the man listening to Jesus' teaching. And they began to implore him to leave their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed was imploring him that he might accompany him. And he did not let him, but he said to him, go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. So he did what Jesus said, told him, go tell everybody. Now, as Jesus was getting into the boat to leave, the man begs Jesus to allow him company him. He wanted to become a disciple of Jesus, but Jesus would not accept Gentile disciples at this stage. Jesus told him to tell the Gentiles what had happened to him as a witness to get them so they would know about Jesus, and they were amazed. Decapolis is a union of the 10 Greek-speaking cities, Gentile cities, 9 of which were on the east side of the Jordan. Only one, Scythopolis, which is in the New Testament times a Gentile city, was on the west side of the Jordan. We see also the policy not to tell the people about what he has done applies to the Jews, but not to the Gentiles. When we come to this section about feeding the 4,000, we see the success of the man's ministry. For now, Jesus is on leave. Next time he comes, he will be welcomed. And when Jesus crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and so he stayed by the seashore. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up and seeing him, fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live." And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. Now for the disciples, the events in this section would be a lesson of Messiah's power. For the woman and Jairus, it would be a great lesson of faith. The falling down before Jesus shows us two things: his personal need and his belief in Jesus. Pressing in figuratively means to the crowd or press upon. In view of what we are about to read, it is important to note that this is because a lot of people were touching him at this stage. A woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and had endured much at the hands of many physicians and spent all that she had and was not helped at all, but rather had gotten worse. After hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him and touched his cloak, for she thought, "If I just touch his garment, I will get well." Immediately the flow of her blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Here he encounters a woman who has a hemorrhage for 12 years. She's had some kind of blood infirmity for the same amount of time that Jairus' daughters had lived. She is 12 years old, and the woman had 12 years of blood disorder, which, by the way, according to the law of Leviticus chapter 15, 19 through 32, made her permanently unclean, ceremonially unclean. Mark points out two things. First, she had suffered much at the hands of many physicians, and secondly, had spent all that she had but was not healed, got worse. The word fringe refers to tassel. There were tassels that were commanded by the Mosaic law, and because Jesus kept the law perfectly, he had these tassels on the borders of his garment. She could not hold him because of her uncleanliness, but she could hold a tassel, and she felt by holding the tassel she will be healed, and she assumed that it was holding the tassel that would heal her. Immediately, Jesus perceived in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And the disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, 'Who touched me?' Really, Jesus?" And he looked around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction.
Jim,
Yeah,
can I add something real quick? Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
no problem. And it showed he knew who it was. He knew exactly who did the touching, but the purpose of the question was to catch the apostolic attention so they learned the lesson of faith. Faith is now required for healing. He corrected her theology. It was not her touch of his garment that healed her, it was her faith that healed her. Her touching his garment was merely an outworking of her faith, and the power to heal did not issue from his clothing, it issued from him. And that was pretty amazing. Here's a quote from Malachi 4, verse 2. This is a prophetic quote. But for you who fear my name, the Son of the righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, and you will go out and leap like calves from the stall. So that's, I think, it's saying that he's got healing in his wings, and this happened here. Verse 35, while he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more? But Jesus, overhearing what was spoken, said to the synagogue official, do not be afraid any longer, only believe. So he's making the issue of belief again. And he allowed no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John and the brother of James. They came into the house of the synagogue official, and he saw a commotion and people loudly weeping and wailing. And this is what they would do when people died. All the family and friends would come over, and sometimes people would come from the synagogue and would be crying outside. Jesus no longer performs miracles for the sake of the public, and so he has everybody else removed from the house. The only one he brings in are three of his apostles and the parents. His purpose is to teach the disciples, and here they learn about his power over death. His policy now is to perform miracles privately in response to personal need and on the basis of faith. And entering in, he said to them, why make a commotion and weep? The child has not died, but is asleep. They began laughing at him, but putting them all out, he took along the child's father and mother and his own companions and entered the room where the child was. Taking the child by the hand, he said to her, Talitha cum, which translates, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl got up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old, and immediately they were completely astounded. And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this, and he said that something should be given her to eat. And now notice his new policy in verse 43, he gave them strict orders not that no one should know about this, and Luke records that he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. Nevertheless, as Matthew points out, his fame continues to spread. Going to chapter 6 here. Jesus went out from there and came into his hometown, and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogues, and the many listeners were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things, and what is this wisdom given to him, and such miracles as these performed by his hands. So they're saying some great evidence here. And the others are going to refute him now, starting in verse 3. Is not the carpenter the son of Mary and the brother of James and Joseph and Judah and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and among his own relatives and in his household. And he could do no miracle there except that he laid hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he wondered at their unbelief, and he was going around the villages teaching. They're like, well, we saw how he grew up, but so he can't be the Messiah, right? Well, in these passages, we learn that Jesus and his foster father were carpenters, so he followed his foster father's profession. And we learn that the name of Jesus' four half-brothers were James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. We also learn that there were at least two sisters that were resident in Nazareth. So Jesus had at least 6 half-siblings or more. So Mary became rather productive after Yeshua was born, contrary to the theology which teaches that Mary stayed a virgin. A lot of Roman Catholics still believe that. Joseph, his foster father, is not mentioned at all in the time period of Jesus' ministry, so we can deduce that he had died sometime before this began. Once again, Jesus is met with rejection, and many are offended with him, and he did not do many miracles here because of their unbelief. Jesus is now not only doing miracles that are founded in faith, he also heals only a few people, and he marvels at their lack of faith here among his own people and relatives. So they're aware of everything he did, and they're aware that his teaching is amazing, but they don't want to believe because they saw him grow up, I guess. And he summoned the 12 and began to send them out in pairs and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. And he instructed them that they should take nothing for their journey except a mere staff, that's a walking stick, no bread, no bag, no money in their belt, but to wear sandals, and added, do not put on 2 tunics. And he said to them, wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave town. Any place that does not receive you or listen to you as you go out from here, shake the dust off and the soles of your feet as a testimony against them. They went out and preached that the men should repent, and they were casting out demons and were anointing men with oil and many sick people and healing them. In spite of the fact that the leaders of Israel have rejected his messianic claim, the people are not yet following their leaders in that claim. But for now, they are not following their leaders, and therefore they are like sheep without a shepherd. The debate among the people is this: should we follow the old shepherds or should we follow this new one? And therefore, in their time of indecision, they are like sheep without a shepherd. And that is the focus of the ministry. Now he sends out the 12. Mark notes that he sends them out in pairs. He sends them out to proclaim the message of the mystery kingdom. No longer is he offering them the Messiah kingdom, but now there's going to be the mystery kingdom, which we are in now, that's going to last at least 2,000 years. And Paul talks about it a lot, and they are given delegated authority to authenticate their message by performing healing and casting out demons. And King Herod heard of it, for his name had become well known, and the people were saying, John the Baptist had risen from the dead, and that is why these miraculous powers are at work in him. But others were saying, he is Elijah, and others were saying, he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he kept saying, John, whom I beheaded, has risen. So Herod wasn't very happy about it. John's role was to herald the king, to pave way for Israel to accept Yeshua as Messiah. Now that the nation had rejected Yeshua and lost the chance to enter the Messianic kingdom, at that point in time, John's mission was complete. He was not going to come back. For Herod himself had sent and had John arrested and bound in prison on account of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip, because he had married her. For John had been saying to Herod, Is it not lawful for you to have your brother's wife? Herodias had a grudge against him and wanted him put to death and could not do so. For Herod was afraid of John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he kept him safe. And when he heard of him, he was very perplexed, but he used to enjoy listening to him. John the Baptist had been in jail for almost 2 years, which was longer time than he had been in active ministry, which was 12 to 14 months. His total time in ministry had been 3 years, just like Jesus. He had been put in jail for criticizing the marriage of Herodias to Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas was one of the sons of Herod the Great, who ordered the death of all the children under age 2 in Bethlehem, and Herodias was the granddaughter of Herod the Great to another son. One of the sons Herod killed. She was first married to her uncle, which of course violated the Mosaic law. Then she left her uncle and became mistress to her step-uncle, and then she married Antiochus, while her first husband, Philip, was still living, which had violated the Mosaic law, and then marrying his brother's wife is a violation of Leviticus 16 and 20. The uncle-niece marriage was a violation of Leviticus 18 and 20. So John was letting them know about that. A strategic day came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his lords and military commanders, and leading the men of Galilee. And when the daughter of Herodias herself came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests, and the king said to the girl, Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you. And he swore to her, Whatever you ask, I will give you up to half of my kingdom. And she went out and said to her mother, What shall I ask for? She said, The head of John the Baptist. She's still bitter about John the Baptist. Because of John's proclamation against her marriage, she convinced her husband to have him arrested, but she could not talk him into having John executed. In verse 20, Antiochus knew that John was a righteous man and a holy one. Therefore, he simply kept him in prison. What changes in that he was at a birthday party, and the daughter of Herodias by a previous marriage did dance, that Herod Antipas liked and made a commitment without thinking it through. He was also probably a bit drunk at this stage and promised her she could have anything she wanted. Immediately she came in a hurry to the king and asked, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And although the king was very sorry, yet because of his oath and because of the dinner guests, he was unwilling to refuse her. So he made an oath, and he had a lot of witnesses, so he had to carry out that oath. Immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded him to bring back his head, and he went and had him beheaded in prison, and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard about this, they came and took away his body and laid it at the tomb, in a tomb. Historically, her name was Solomon. The Hebrew name was Shalomit. When she asked for the head of John the Baptist, Antiochus tried to avoid it, but he was trapped by his own commitment. As a result, John the Baptist was beheaded. Keep in mind that John was killed for personal reason, but the public charge was political, according to Josephus' writings. Now we come to the fourth major division in the Messiah's life, where the focus is on training the 12 by the king, and he is training them for their future mission, which we find recorded in the book of Acts. And the apostles gathered together with Jesus, and they reported to him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a secluded place and rest a while. For there were many people coming and going, and they didn't even have time to eat. They went away in a boat to a secluded place by themselves. After being sent out in pairs to proclaim the message of the mystery kingdom, the apostles returned to Jesus and give an account of all they had done and taught. In Mark 31, that they were so many people coming and going that they didn't even have time to eat. So Jesus, taking the apostles with him, went away in a boat in a secluded place, in a place called Bethsaida, on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. The people saw them going, and many recognized them and ran there together on foot from all the cities and got there ahead of them. And when Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And it was already quite late. His disciples came to him and said, this place is desolate, and it's already quite late. He sent them away so that they may go into surrounding countrysides and village and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread and give them something to eat? The fact that the large crowd here indicates that the interest of the people is still quite high in spite of their leader's rejection of Jesus. Here Mark says that he felt compassion for them. He gives them the reason because they were like sheep without a shepherd. They have not yet made a decision to whom they should follow, the old shepherd or the new one. Now the disciples asked Jesus to send the crowd away to the surrounding villages to buy food for themselves, and Jesus responded, saying to them, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. So he made them responsible to feed the people. He says it'll cost more than 200 denarii, and there still wouldn't be enough bread. The denarius was one day's wage, so to feed all these uh, people would cost more than 200 days' wages. And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." And when he found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. And he commanded them to sit down by groups on the green grass. And they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up towards heaven, he blessed the food and broke the loaves, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before them, and he divided up 2 fishes among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up 12 baskets of the broken pieces and also of the fish, and there were 5,000 men who ate loaves. So there was probably other women and children. There was probably close to 20,000 people that he fed there to that day, and we see 12 there again. Now Jesus performed the miracles to feed the crowd. Then Jesus gave thanks and broke the bread and fish and kept giving it to the disciples who distributed it to the people until they were all satisfied. He provided and gave them the food, which they in turn gave to the people. Here we see that he gives the apostles the responsibility to distribute all he provides. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side to Bethsaida, while he himself was sending the crowd away. After bidding them farewell, he left for the mountains to pray. When in the evening the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land, seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, at about the 4th watch in the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by. They were to go on to Bethsaida, but you ask why they were not already in Bethsaida. Yes, in fact, there were 2 Bethsaidas, one where the 5,000 were fed in Gentile territory on the northwest side of the Sea of Galilee, and this one they say was going to be on the northeast side of the sea in the Jewish territory near Capernaum. Jesus saw them straining at their oars, for the wind was against them. Actually, the Greek word is far more graphic than the translation indicates. The word is basanizo, which is the verb form of the noun basanos, which means an examination by torture or torment. So they were being tortured by the wind, basically. So the verb means to torture, afflict with pain, vex, or harass. This also used metaphorically as it is here, the expression literally be seeing them being tortured at their oars. Why do you suppose he intended to pass them by? Surely he meant it to be an encouragement and a help to them, but how would it do that? Remember, he is teaching them and training them for the ministry that lies ahead for them after Pentecost. He has already shown them in the earlier storm that he has power over the winds and the waves, and they have just come from feeding of the 5,000, where he demonstrated to them that he provided for them. Surely he meant to remind them of these things by his presence, walking on the water. And the lesson he is teaching here is to depend on Messiah in the face of impossible circumstances. It was now the 4th watch of the night. That would be between 3 and 6 in the morning. They set out in the 1st watch, and each watch had been 3 hours long, so they're now on the fourth watch. So they'd been at sea for about 9 hours. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed that it was a ghost and cried out. What they had was a kind of a superstition, is like when you're getting ready to die, you'll see a ghost on the water. And so they didn't know it was Jesus. For they all saw him, were terrified, but immediately he spoke to them and said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished, for they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. They just didn't want to believe, no matter what they saw. They didn't recognize him, and they thought they were seeing ghosts, and they were terrified. So Jesus tells them that, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Here Mark points out that they had not gained any insight from the incidents, the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. They should have understood from the miracle of the loaves that he would provide for them and he would protect them, and the fact that he was a future mission for them means that they would not be destroyed by this storm. They have not yet learned to apply that theology to their daily living. Consequently, they were filled with fear. Jesus proposed in his miracle to teach his disciples to depend on him in the face of impossible circumstances. And when he crossed over, they came onto land in Gennesaret and more to the shore. And when they got out, immediately the people recognized them and ran about the whole country and began to carry here and there their pallets who were sick uh, to place they heard he was. And whenever he entered villages or countrysides, they were laying the sick in the marketplace and imploring him that they might touch the fringe of his cloak. As many as touched it were cured. So this is this is the end of the chapter, and out in the Gentile area, he's just going all out on healing again, and the Jews not so much because they had rejected his messiahship. He was very limited, but here he went through a big healing spree again, and there's a lot of great miracles in these two chapters. Personal need and faith. There are those there who believed in him, and their faith is shown by the response to his presence. They ran about the whole country, bringing the sick to where he was, and they were imploring him that they might touch the fringe of his cloak. And just as it was for the hemorrhaging woman, touching the hem of his garment was the outworking of their faith, and not touching of the garment, but their faith healed them. We see again here that they were coming to him with personal need for healing, and they were coming in faith. As a result, they were healed. Again, it fulfills the Malachi 4, verse 2, and healing was in his wings. And a great prophecy that really came through in this chapter.